Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the podcast. I'm welcoming my new friend Cowan onto the show and very excited to have him on and talk about this. It's something that I hear time and time again in my clinical practice, actually quite often. And so he shared with me that he wanted to talk about this. And I was like, absolutely, yes, 100%. And I think also we tend not to think about this, whether that's a good thing, a bad thing, a healthy thing, unhealthy thing. But we tend to not think men do this. But the reality is we all can do this, men and women. And the topic of today, I'm going to give a quick little intro to it and then have Cohen introduce himself and we'll get jumping right in. But the topic today is people pleasing, right? It's a very common thing to do. It's not that uncommon, but I think we tend to associate, generally speaking, that women tend to do that more than men. But I think the reality is we're going to often find that it might be equal for various reasons, that it's not just women do this and men do something else, but actually people pleasing serves a purpose. There's a part of that that is a survival mechanism. There's a part of that of trying to maintain homeostasis, to try and navigate our world. And there's a positive side to that, as well as some downsides. And so we're going to kind of just talk about that today. But before we jump into the full conversation, how you doing today, Cole?
I'm good, Travis. Thanks for having me. And yes, really happy to talk about that subject with you. I know you're going to hold space in a great way and love the work you're doing. Cowan Austrie from Montreal, personal trainer, health coach. So through movement, I take care of people. I want them to pursue their dreams in terms of longevity, being around as long as possible. So we use movement to take care of them. That's the way I hold space for people. In that environment, the conversation is a lot about movement, but the mind and the body plays a big role. And the fact that I'm on that podcast today was I've been a lot on in my practice, movement, get strong. And the conversation shifted a lot in the last year and a half to 2 years about mind, connecting with my mind, connecting with myself, and having that conversation with clients as well, where there's more than just like the body, our vessel. There's really us as humans, and making sure that everyone that comes into my space, I want to know what they're going through, in not necessarily a deeper level, but just more like, hey, I see you. How do you feel today? Some questions of like how you slept and stuff like that. But I've been digging deeper in that, and the work has to start with me. So that's where in the last year and a half and 2 years, I've been doing a lot of the work. And that led me to understand that I was navigating life through more like people pleasing. It's recently kind of digging back into my childhood and asking questions around my parents, my mom, especially asking questions there, my spouse, friends, and starting to kind of map out and paint the picture of like where it started. It really, and I think for anyone, it starts like when we see a pattern that doesn't necessarily serve us, or sometimes, like you said, could be a good trait, but a downside as well, brought me to understand that, okay, at a young age, having a father that left us when I was 5, first of all, already there, kind of losing that father figure, put me in a position of not understanding why. And is it me the problem? Is it who I think you're too young to understand that? Kind of asking more question around how was the dynamic at home. He was a pretty toxic man, more towards me than my sister, in a way that I had to almost like walk on eggshells and always be that little perfect boy to make sure I wasn't on his bad side. So, and doing the homework, I realized that people pleaser usually are parents pleaser. Like they want to make sure that they're good in the eyes of their parents. And I think that triggered more on my side in terms of how I wanted to make sure my dad saw me at a young age. And when the separation happened, it's not like if there was necessarily a healthy separation there. So you're left out of like, I guess I didn't please enough. And after this, if I keep going in terms of how I see how I continue that people pleasing aspect, my parents, so my mom with a new partner in her life, great family, loving family. Everyone has their own trauma. So as two humans, like reconnecting with different children and trying to make a new couple there, they come with their own traumas, and
Hmm.
some fights can come into the house, some arguments and stuff like that. And I would find myself in the middle of that, of trying to keep the house in a happy state.
Hmm.
She would say, like, you would block your ears or try to always find the good side of everyone and bring back everyone together when you're not at an age to understand that.
Yeah. And what would you
But
think the purpose of was that? What do you think looking back now?
I think any children is looking for peace. So in a house where you're not necessarily seeing peace, and again, I think it was an amazing thing that my mom was able to get out of that toxic relationship and
Hmm.
build her life again. But then she has to come out of that and
Hmm.
kind of rebuild with another man that comes with his own baggage. And then there's still going to be fights. But for a 5 to 6, 7 year old that doesn't understand that, just sees, oh, there's other fights with another man.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, I'm just seeking for peace, how I can do this. I remember if I was behaving well, suppressing my own emotion, not putting emotions on anyone else, and trying to reconcile everyone, I would see a certain light at the end of the tunnel of like, there's going to be peace in the next maybe 30 minutes or hour in the house. So that's where I think others can maybe relate, is having peace. And how can I do this? Was pleasing, making
Because
sure I was,
what would
go
peace
for it.
bring you? If I had peace, then what? What would that
Then
do?
if I had peace, I would be able to either be the child I wanted to be
Hmm.
in the house, playful, I guess just joy and just appreciating, I guess, the parents in front of me.
Hmm.
Because if I see it right now, me having two boys, you can see how they're always looking up. Are we interacting? Are we joyful? Are we really there with them? They want to. It's like they just need a validation from the parents. So I guess I'm looking for, hey, are you guys good? Like, can we just have peace and joy in that house right now?
Yeah.
But as a kid, it's probably difficult to process, and you're just trying things. That's where, from my dad to my stepdad, that I could see how I was looking for maybe more of a role model in a man. Like my
Yeah.
relationship with men started where, okay, I was, because my mom was more my refuge, but at the end of the day, you're still a young boy that's looking for a figure, so a father
Mm.
figure. And that's where a stepdad could do a great job, but
Mm.
also in his regards, he's probably on the line of like, it's not my children's. How do I get into the parenting part? Do I involve myself that much or not? Like, so I'm not necessarily blaming anyone. It's just how the dynamic was and how I responded. And it led me to look for that. Okay, hockey coaches, me being in
Mm.
the hockey world,
Mm.
every time I'm changing teams, looking up to the coach, making sure I'm moving a certain way in the space with the team, with the coach when I'm interacting so that they like me. If I had something to say, maybe it's better for me not to say it, not to share the
Mm.
emotion. Being,
S-
yes, coach.
So even in
Uh,
that space of coaching,
yeah,
hockey was even pleasing them to be accepted, to like me. So I may not say or do something, right?
yeah,
Because I don't want to create tension or chaos.
exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I think, and it's not necessarily a conversation 10, 15 years ago that men had of like, I'm here, I see you, I hear you, you're allowed to express your emotions and kind of I'll be there to support and we'll go back and forth. So there's like that side of me growing up of people pleasing and not necessarily after having men in that era
Mm.
understanding maybe the pattern and helping me in that is more like, no, actually, yes, you got to stay in your lane, don't say a word. And if your behavior matches what I'm looking for, then you're accepted.
Yeah.
And it's
Interesting.
something
Yeah.
that's right now pretty much, I think, changing. The conversations is really changing. Is it changing in the sport that I used to play? Maybe not. But if people my age right now, or whoever is going through this process, is teaching young boys now, I think
Yeah.
it's a great thing. But that's how I feel that I've been navigating since I'm 5,
Yeah.
of making sure there's no chaos, there's no arguments, there's always peace, but I
Yeah.
have to suppress something to do that. And it's usually my emotions, the way I'm actually feeling.
Hmm. And I think you hit, it's important, I think, that when we look at this, and one, thank you for sharing what you have so far, is that people pleasing, there's a benefit to that. There's a pro. It's doing something. And there's also, what we call like a positive consequence, right? So that would be peace, that would be acceptance, that might be um, less chaos. That might be, people like me, quote unquote, or my home is quiet, or I can be a kid. I don't have to worry. Right. So there's doing something. That's the pro. Now, the consequence that maybe isn't so effective would be one of the things you said is I have to not really speak my mind or suppress or bury certain things. So what are some of the other things that maybe you experience from that kind of suppression, that people pleasing, the darker side of it, that if I have to suppress, what has that led to for you, and or in relationships or in your workplace, etc.?
Totally. So for sure, as I'm looking at the last years, being able to more analyze how I was navigating. Example, in a relationship, if you're someone who comes in the house and not necessarily sharing your emotion because you're in that people pleasing aspect, there's a spouse on the other side that's expecting vulnerability and expecting you to share really your emotions to grow together so that they can understand you and kind of put their input or help you in a situation. But if I'm always on the, hey, I'm good, yes, but like I want the other people to elaborate on their emotions, but me, it's always about, no, I'm good. I just want to make sure the rest is good and then I'll be good. But then at one point, you can accumulate those suppressed emotion and it comes out and the partner doesn't understand why. And sometimes it never comes out, but you're starting to like feel a certain way that either you need to cope with something else or you're just in your head constantly trying to just rationalize any emotion or anything you're doing, and it's not helping the partner.
Yeah.
It's not helping the friendship. It's not helping either you how I would interact with my family in terms of I could be a quiet one in a space, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes they'll tell you it's a great thing to be quiet in a space because you're just analyzing and speaking when it's worth it or speaking wise words. But sometimes it's more like I rather not share or put more input in a situation that might change the environment. Even if I wanted to share my side of this, and it's almost I need to accept that it can't always be perfect and happy.
Yeah.
I'm allowed on my own time to have a moment of sadness or a moment of anger and share that, and someone else can hold space for me for that. It's almost I'm like it's not your place to do that, but I'm doing it for others.
Yeah.
So eventually it's not serving me. It's not serving the people around me.
Yeah.
Because then just a vicious cycle. So that's where I think tapping into vulnerability was another conversation with myself.
And
Hey, how vulnerable I am.
Yeah, and can you tell us a bit more about that shift? Because it sounds like more of a recent shift of I need to kind of examine this to do some internal work. Like, can you, like, was it an awareness thing? Was it a light bulb moment? Like, what was the thing that kind of said, "Hey, I need to look into this." Can you speak on that?
Yeah, definitely. Again, the work environment that I am, so the colleagues I work with, they're a lot in that conversation. The person I work for, in terms of how the private studio we have, is someone who brings a lot of awareness around that, and that's the type of work a lot of us have been working on. Example, hey, it started with a book, and let's start tapping into these conversations. Because example, I could be books I was reading about how to improve my business, the way I train people, stuff like that. But really, okay, how can Cowan understand himself deeper? And it's conversation at work that we started having. And it led me to that in that last year, and where I got really vulnerable with myself or going deeper. And I think there's a correlation that I recently understood is like, I stopped drinking a year ago, and drinking wasn't necessarily an issue. But I've recently realized how I was way more open when I was numbing with alcohol some nights, myself, in terms of, hey, I'm feeling like I can share because now I'm not overthinking and keeping it to myself. And when I stopped doing that, on example, a glass of wine or two or three on a Friday night, and then feeling like I can share more, I was really myself. I'm like, okay, so now I'm feeling this. I'm about to share something. I don't have this either tool to help me, like alcohol, to help me share, but it's there. I need to work on that. That big year was like, these moments are telling me right now that I was using something else to maybe share, and not even at an excess. Like I wasn't someone who needed to stop because I was excessive with it. I just understood that felt like I was sharing more when I was out with friends or drinking or stuff like that. Then now I'm really like clean. Cohen needs
Hmm.
to share without anything else.
Yeah. And so can you speak more about that? Like using, in this case, alcohol to help talk. So what,
Yeah,
a little more detail about what it helped kind of slow down for you or quiet down or give you courage? Because I think that's an important piece too, that
yeah,
again, it was doing something at the time. So can you tell us a bit more?
definitely. And I think where I'm going with that, it's also there's not even it could be a drink or it could be 10. I think it's the question more of oh, I have something that calms me down
Hmm.
and not makes me overthink, so now I can share.
Yeah.
And that was alcohol bringing that. And for me, I was like, I need to find something that's in a healthier way. So meditation, breathing techniques, um, taking a moment for myself to kind of regulate my emotions, and then giving me that push to share without having the
Hmm.
alcohol. That other people can use drugs, alcohol, food, maybe, or whatever that they think that will just kind of numb something or a certain emotion and then help them kind of share more.
Hmm.
You can't do that through life. Like, you got to figure out a way
Yeah.
to really share within without any other coping mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted a healthy coping
Hmm.
mechanism. For me, meditating for a year and a half every morning, not missing a morning, making sure that I'm really kind of taking a moment for myself, made a huge difference.
Hmm.
And that's where in the last year I was like I decided to take the alcohol out in terms of health reasons of, okay, I know that alcohol now is more with research poison and I'm in the industry. I want to show an example there. I want to be sharp on the weekends with my kids. But then I was like, man, I was sharing more on Friday nights and Saturday nights when I had a glass of wine or two or three with my wife. I don't have it now and I'm sharing less.
Hmm.
So there's something there that I have to tap into.
Hmm.
That's where I was like, I think I was using that as well to kind of help me be the real Cohen.
Yeah.
But can I find that real Cohen without it?
Yeah. And two things. One, you said it quiet. What did it quiet down for you? I think it's an important thing to maybe
Mm-hmm.
verbalize for those listening. And for me, I'm curious, what did it quiet down for you as you would when you would take a drink or two?
But a bit of the concept of, if I'm sharing my emotions, I'm putting on an energy on someone
Mm.
that is not necessarily should not deserve that. It's a weird way of thinking because that person in front of me is someone I love and cherish,
Mm.
and they're usually the same. They love me as well, and they're ready to hold space for me. They're ready to listen. But I feel like it would be a burden me to put something on them.
Ah, so it's
But I'm
quieting down that
expecting,
belief of I'm a
yeah,
burden to kind of help that
in some sort,
some
yeah.
sort. Yeah.
And then if usually alcohol, you're like more in a relaxed vibe, I would say, or not thinking, oh, it's not going to affect that person right now because I'm not really thinking clearly.
Hmm.
Now you're sharing more.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like that person in the bar that's ready to talk to someone because they're just under the influence of alcohol. They're like having more guts or ready
Yeah.
to bid that feeling that I was like, okay, I don't have it anymore. I'm about to share something,
Mm.
but it feels like there's something missing for me to share.
Mm.
But there shouldn't be missing something. There should be me, myself, ready to share, and that person is there, will listen, even if it's sad or anger. Together, we should be able to grow and work on that.
Yeah.
But for me, it's always like, no, I'm there for you though, but I don't want to put anything on you.
Ah, sure. Well, and is that the pleasing piece? Like I'm here for you, but I'm not really
Yeah,
going to open myself up to that because that's that burden piece. Is that kind of the connection? Okay.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
and you said something else that, you know, I want to go back to that, for the past year and a half, you've been meditating daily. Yeah, that's a journey, right? Year and a half. Can you speak more about that
it
journey and
is.
what that's brought? Because I think just hearing that every day, you've put work into it. It's not like, hey, I did a week of it and or 2 weeks of it and here I am,
No,
but I've been doing it for a year and a half every single day. And how is that?
yeah.
One, what's that
And
been
it,
like for you? And two, how has it helped with like that awareness and people pleasing aspect?
for me, and it was really important because it's funny how in my industry it's something, and slowly people are connecting like training and meditation and ice bath and stuff like that, and they expect either the trainer or the trainee like to do it. And I was, like you said, some weeks doing it, some weeks not, and I really committed. And for me was waking up in the morning, doing my training, And then in our facility, we have a sauna, jumping into the sauna, infrared sauna, and meditating and taking a moment for myself to regulate my emotions, connect with my breathing, and really kind of feel myself, not being in that rat race. That's other stuff that working on, of like being perfectionist, always more, 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 and kind of also numbing any thoughts by being always busy. It was a moment for myself really that I've never had, of like 5-10 minutes of, there's, yes, maybe sounds from the meditation or guided by someone, but going deeper and really understanding a feeling that I had either yesterday or in the moment, and how can I shift that. And as it's like a muscle, as you start meditating more, it's a practice that you're able to just bring into your life during the day. So example, that it's a situation that could bring me anger or sadness, and finding a way just to tune in and with breathing regulate my emotions and then approach a situation is a game changer. It's almost like I found that new tool,
Yeah.
and a healthy
Yeah.
one.
And you've been putting a lot of
But it
time
needed
into, yeah,
practice.
a lot of practice.
That's it, because my mind is always
Yeah.
racing. So when I was just meditating, like you said, for a week, and then you stop, you're like, oh, it's almost worthless in your head. You're like, I'm not able to concentrate. And when someone guides you, it almost tells you, like, you might today just think about whatever, what your kids have to do this weekend, and you're not able to connect. But through time, eventually, you'll find a way to get deeper and really connect with yourself, and use that tool for any other situation in your day.
And for those listening, I'm curious, this is going to be different for everybody, but how long do you
Yes.
think it took to kind of get past that initial hurdle of like starting to notice the positive impact of taking that time out every day to meditate and to be mindful?
It's a great question. And it's tough to, I would compare it to like training in terms of, okay, 3-6 months in, you're starting to really change your body. And with someone who never did it, example, to you see a huge change. I think the 3 months mark of like, or there's saying of like 21 days, you change a habit, 49, you're changing a lifestyle type of thing. It's not wrong to say that like a 3 months, you're really starting to see, it's like almost breathing. It's something, oh, I need it. It's almost, if I was looking at the clock and I was about to go over the time where I had to hit the sauna because I had to take the shower then and see clients, I needed it. I was like, no, I need to, I'll find a way to meditate. So it's really being able to go past it's a chore, a thing I have to do. It's more, it needs to be part of me. So pinpointing how long, I think just being patient and trusting the process was what I gave myself have the homework. I was like, I'm going to try this, and really, like, I would put an alarm and I'm like, I got to do this until it feels natural for me and that I need it.
Well, and thank you for sharing that, because I think it brings more realistic lens on when we're trying to implement something new, like a new skill or new practice, that it does take, it's like that muscle, is that repeated practice. Because it's awkward at first. It's like, am I doing it right? Is this how it's supposed to be? And then you get in your head, and especially if you're already in your head, you get more in your head, right? Like, well, what's happening? And so just good to hear just the more realistic time frame. And I know it's a little bit different for everybody, but I think that the key I'm hearing is be consistent. And that's what I say in my clinical practice too, working with people, is it's about consistency. It's over time. We're changing behavioral patterns, and we're changing, sometimes rewiring how the brain and what the brain's connected to. So you got to practice something new. And in a way, you could even akin people pleasing as a type of practice. If you go back to that, like, you've practiced people pleasing, you've practiced early on, and partly probably was survival of like trying to navigate your life. I just would make sure everyone was okay, or saying yes to everybody to be liked. And so that's a form of mental practice, even behavioral practice. And then to change that behavior takes repeated practice into something new, where I'm showing up and I'm not people pleasing, but I'm listening to others and also listening to myself, and working on expressing, which is another practice. And that feels, I'm sure the first few times you did it, I'm curious what it was like for you to finally like show up and not just please the person in front of you, but just to be Cowan, authentic, and share, what are my needs right now? What's my experience? What am I feeling right now? And how do I verbalize that and give that to someone, knowing I'm not a burden? So I'm guessing that in fact, I am curious, what was that like for you the first few times of not people pleasing, but showing up? Was that easy and I'm ready to go? Or was it kind of some hesitation there? Did it feel kind of awkward at first?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because the awkward part is like that little voice in your head that you're still fighting, and it's just telling you, no, don't
Mm,
share this. You don't have to share this. Like, it's going to create a certain, I don't know, tension. You'll have to address this. You might take 30 minutes of your, but where I had to like just fight this is actually almost not listen to the voice and right away
mm,
share it. So example for me, the easiest way right now, and I'm still in that process, honestly, like today I'm talking and I'm not an expert. It's really sharing my journey and sharing how I'm going through this. It's, I think, easier with someone you really trust to start doing
sure.
that, like setting healthy boundaries. So either it's like my coworkers, my wife, my parents right now, in terms of being ready to just right away share something that usually I would keep to
Mm,
myself and not necessarily listening to that little
uh,
voice, avoiding just kind of interacting with my little voice and just ready to just kind of
mm,
interact, just see how it looks like to give a boundary. And I'm using that word more like, hey, right now I would rather do this, or I need 30 minutes to read and kind of take a moment for myself to come back and be more present. Sometimes the old Cowan would have been, no, I got this. No
yeah,
worries. I'll
yeah.
do it. And for me, it's using the people I around me that I know that are
Mm,
there for me to help me start opening up a bit more. And I think as I trust that process and I get better, that's where it could kind of
mm,
start blending in with more like strangers or just people I encounter with. Because the people pleasing part, when you don't know someone, also sometimes I feel it's a bit higher. It's almost like you just want to always seem like the happy person, the good person, the the
yeah.
perfect person. So to a stranger is almost slightly going into the I want to be validated by the
Mm,
other. So the practice comes of, if I come home now, instead of just saying, yes, I had a good day, I'm going to share a bit more of my
mm,
day. And it's stupid as like this. I used to just, I'm good. Oh, I
yeah.
had a good day,
Because
babe.
that's that. I don't want to be a
But
burden
no,
piece. I don't want to,
no,
right?
that's it.
Yeah.
I don't want to I don't want to elaborate where it might shift the energy of the other
Right.
person, but she just wants to know how my day
Mm,
was with a bit more detail. Oh, I helped someone today
yeah.
doing this, and it really made me feel good. I had a certain situation with someone. I didn't like it. What's
Mm,
your thought? Should I approach it like this? I wasn't
yeah.
like that. And I'm still working
Yeah.
on that, but I want to open
And I
up a
like
bit
what you
more.
said. It's also choosing the right person or persons to do this with, and knowing too that people
Yeah.
aren't perfect. Because sometimes we might share something, even with maybe our spouse who typically is there, but they may have a rough day and it might not go well. But it doesn't mean that I'm still a burden, right? That they had a moment that I tried to be vulnerable and share and they couldn't receive it. It doesn't speak to me necessarily, but that small voice might say that though. See, told you, look, Cohen, see, you're a
Yeah.
burden because look what you did to your wife. Look what you did to your parents. Because that's also with the lie that can come in because it's so subtle, right? That voice is so subtle, but so believable when that voice comes in. And I like how you called it the small voice because it just kind of comes in. It's like, hey, dude, shouldn't share that, right? It's very, and we have experiences
Yeah.
too in the
That's
past
it.
that probably didn't go so well. And remember that time? Remember that time, Colin, when you did that with your dad or your stepdad or that that coach? Remember how that went? So it's very good at reminding us too of those moments when it didn't go so well as
Hmm.
ammunition, so to speak, to keep us from changing.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, now that you've been practicing this, and I love that you're still practicing this and noticing the voice and challenging it and pushing up against it, what are some positives you've seen in your relationship? For example, even like with your wife or someone else, a parent, when you've been able to kind of be more open, not get stuck in the
Okay.
burden and
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm just going to share this and be more vulnerable, for lack of a better word.
What I've seen is that I've also had a character trait that I think I should figure
Mm,
everything out, and that by sharing more, now other people are able to help me figure things out and be like, hey, right now you're at 30% of your capacity. I'll jump in at 70%, and we meet each other, and I'll help. It could be my wife, it could be the coworkers, it's going to be a good friend of like, hey, it's something that you've never shared, and I'm
mm,
ready to help. And for me, it's almost like a weight out of my shoulders. Like, I don't have to
mm,
figure this out. Or that situation, you can actually be there also with me. Like, I didn't expect that response because I thought it would have been a burden, or no, it's not my
mm,
place to do it, or however that little voice kind
yeah.
of communicated it. But for me, it's like refreshing where I'm like, oh, it's not that hard. And I'm actually seeing really nice
Mm,
support there. And that's something that should have known because I do the support on the other side, but I didn't think I could
Yeah.
get that support
Yeah.
for myself.
Well, because the
Um,
lie was that it'd be a burden. So if
and
I'm a
it's
burden, that's not being supported, right? That was the old lie. Yeah, that makes sense.
no,
But you're seeing actually
yeah,
on the contrary, no, I'm not a
yeah,
burden. I'm being supported and aided, and it's a team, and maybe even relieved a bit. Like
yeah,
if I'm at 30 and my wife's at 70, like that, she could carry a lot right now. And vice versa. Sometimes I'm 70,
yeah.
she's 30. But it's like, or before, if I was like, I'm not going to
That's
share
it.
anything, I'm kind of like alone in the 20, 30% trying to just figure it all out, right? Which is, I'm
Hmm.
guessing, even more exhausting.
Yeah, it is more exhausting. And then, like, coming back to earlier in our conversation, then it doesn't help if eventually you're like getting everything out because you were suppressing it for 3 months of like, I was on a
Yeah.
30% for the last 2 months because of my
Yeah.
stress at work. But then the spouse is like, well, you
Right.
never shared that. So how am I
And how would
supposed
that
to know?
leak out in the past? How
Well,
did
oh,
it
I
leak out
wasn't
in the
sharing.
past for you? Like, because I feel like those things tend to like leak and seep when we don't in the past. Was it be more anger, more irritable, more
Yeah, it could be
isolation?
it could be a moment, and I'm someone who's pretty passive, but in terms of it could be a moment of like you're
Yeah.
just like
Boom.
anger and triggered, and you're just like louder on a moment, but it's like for the other person, like you're always super calm and everything's
It's
good,
like
and
a
then
shock to them,
wow,
right?
3 months
It's a
later,
shock
there's
to them.
once,
They're like,
yeah,
whoa.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it, yeah, because there wasn't a buildup or a painted picture of like right now in the
Hmm.
next 2 weeks, I might be a bit more under stress, fatigue. I need your support. Don't take
Yeah.
things personally. If I say something, I'm really working hard to manage the emotions. And then the other partner is like
Hmm.
more, oh, thank you, and I'll be aware, and I'll be there to check you and be there with
Yeah.
you to support. So the element of surprise, of anger or sadness or whatever doesn't help long because you're not necessarily prepping
Yeah.
your surroundings.
And I'm wondering, how would you encourage, yourself now looking back? What encouragement could you have given yourself back then about this whole people pleasing versus being vulnerable and sharing? What's something you would say if you can do that and go back?
That you'll be surprised how much people
Hmm.
are ready to help,
Hmm.
especially your loved ones. And it's still something that where I'm trying to do it. Like it's funny as a question because when I'm looking at my 2-year-old and my 4-year-old, my boys right now, it's
Hmm.
something that I'm really working hard in terms of showing how
Hmm.
daddy is vulnerable and daddy is
Hmm.
communicating his emotions. And daddy wants everyone to be seen and heard. And it's important
Hmm.
that they see that. So if I would see myself just like 2, 3 years ago and I had to talk to that person, would just really be like, don't be afraid of being vulnerable with especially your loved ones because
Hmm.
they're there to support you and just really make the first
Yeah.
steps of sharing
Hmm.
and you'll be surprised. It's sometimes it could be a good advice, but was I ready or would have been ready to hear that even 3, 4, 5 years
Right.
ago?
Yeah.
It
It's a
still took a
process.
process because
Hmm.
it's ingrained in me in terms of pleasing people. But I think what helps either right now to whoever is listening is that it's a
Yeah.
conversation that's more common and it's not something that a
Right.
man should shy out from and redefining the narrative about how a man should be carrying himself in a
Yeah.
household or
Does it make
in the
you less
world,
of a man sharing these
being more
things?
nurtured.
Okay.
No, I think
Hmm.
you're more powerful
Yeah.
if you're sharing. If you're more vulnerable, closer to your emotions, able to communicate, you're a
Absolutely.
stronger man. And that was something that I never
Yeah.
thought really before. The conversation was more about man
Yeah.
up, don't share. They
Right.
don't need to know this.
Yeah.
You're a provider. You're
Right.
supposed to
And I would
just
call
hold the
that being
fort.
more disintegrated, disconnected, where this is
Exactly.
about integration, being integrated with my mind and my body and my relationships, like my interpersonal relationships as well as with myself. And when I am able to do that, I am more effective. I am more powerful. I'm a better man. I'm a better dad, husband,
Hmm.
coach, because I am connected and there's
Yeah.
not this disintegration between parts, that I'm actually able to find relief and support and encouragement. And there's actually something very promising as I do this. And so it's such a powerful story. And I can't wait to hear more of your journey. And I wish you the best as you continue this journey of working out that muscle, just keep working that thing out. And one kind of really important question, what's a current album you're spinning right now that you're loving? What's a current song? Yeah, album music. I totally
Album.
curveball, but this is something I've been loving hearing people
Um,
what they're listening to.
and it's funny because sometimes I'm really into music and I would have to kind of look at the title because at work,
Sure.
music is a big thing. So usually it's different when I listen in terms of with the
Right.
clients in my car. But that was shared from one of my colleagues at work, the owner of the facility, Val Desjardins. The album
Hmm.
from Red Mango, the album, sorry, is called Red Mango. So it's like a mix of um, J- old Jamaican songs with some new hip hop, but the lyrics, and it's a great question because the lyrics been bothering me more about like the industry of hip hop and rap that was
Hmm.
super in my life before. And for me, right now, it's like I wouldn't listen to a podcast of people swearing and talking about cars and girls and stuff like that. And music is starting
Interesting.
to irritate me in that way. And that album, Red Mango, really brings me more positive energy and that healing part
Yeah.
or that journey.
Because I think that's
Definitely.
powerful because I believe music. I love music too, and music is so powerful. And it's something I've been shifting, asking my
Yeah.
guests because it's so fascinating what we hear and what and just the array of music out there. And in your story specifically, it's like, wow, I'm starting to shift what I listen to because I'm seeing the impact it has on me. So thank you for sharing that. And last question.
My pleasure. There was another
Oh, we'll
album
say that
also.
one.
Sorry, I
One more
was
album.
about
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
I don't want to cut you because I was looking for it as well. This is Russ
Hmm.
Santiago, the album. Russ also that was pretty much rapping about money, cars, and girls, and that made a huge shift recently in terms of healing that journey. And the whole album is about how he's
Wow.
working on himself, and it's just empowering seeing artists that they have great lyrics, but they can use words properly and help others than just kind of put back the generations or the new
Yeah.
generation in the old way of thinking.
Last
Also,
question. Where can we find your work if people are in your
sorry,
area that would love to get coaching from you and
totally. So, like I said, from Montreal, Canada, located in Westmount, the Studio Montreal, it's called, our facility. Easy to find me on Instagram. It's Cowan.Austrie. That
yep,
could be kind of put into
100%.
the links as well. But the Studio Montreal, we really have something special there. The whole team, like I said, they brought
Mm,
me into that work and this
yeah,
constant conversation we have over there. And I think that's where our clients are benefiting there than just squatting and running on a treadmill. There's that bigger conversation of checking their
yeah,
energy, their emotions,
yeah.
and being in tune with that. It's
That's great.
conversation we have on the floor at a
That's
certain
awesome.
limit as well. So it's just making sure that we really read the person in front of us and not just a number that's coming here
Well, it sounds like a
to
really
just lift weights.
holistically healthy group to work with. And yes, all the stuff will be in the description for everyone to
Definitely.
click on. If you're in the area in Canada, I recommend Cohen. Please go see him because it's not just about the physical body for him; it's about holistic health. And if you take away nothing from this episode other than, hey, this is a man who's really doing some integrative work of taking care of himself in all areas of life. Like I feel like that's the kind of coach you want. Someone who's not perfect because I'm not perfect either, but is working towards growth and has awareness to say, here's what I'm working on. That's someone that I would follow. So, Cohen, thank you for coming on. I wish you the best and for the rest of your day, rest of the week with your kids, family, and your clients you work with. And dude, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Thanks, Travis, for having me. And again, same for others. Just follow other podcasts that you've been doing, Travis, and they're going to benefit from that. So either this one or others, if it's one life that we can change,
Hands
that's what we
down,
want.
absolutely. So, dude, wish you the best, man.